Our speakers tonight are Adelle Getz and hopefully her daughter Beth Steiner. Unfortunately, Beth has a fractured ankle, and she was going to partner with Adelle in doing this presentation tonight. We're hoping that she will be able to pop in. Anyway, to go on, Adelle is an occupational therapist with expertise in the area of dementia, both in aged care facilities as well as in the community. But most relevant to this Zoom session is the personal experience she had as having cared for her mom, Rochi, in her home for 25 years, the last 10 of which Rochi had dementia. Adelle created a dementia-friendly environment, tailoring her home to suit her mom's needs. Beth Steiner is Adelle's daughter, and we hope she'll be here soon. And she's a teacher and a mum to 2 young children. She was very much Adelle's care partner in caring for their beloved Guggy, as Rochi was fondly known to one and all. Beth and Adelle are now also business partners in DOTS, their dementia consulting business. They felt that there was a real need for a service such as this to help train and empower carers in how best to care for someone with dementia. Their Zoom session is a story filled with love, faith, and even a few laughs. Of course, there will be time for questions. You can type them, please, into the chat box at the bottom of your screen, or at the end, you will be able to ask them in person if you prefer to do that. So I now have the greatest pleasure in thanking Adelle for sharing her time with us. I will hand the microphone over to her. Adelle, could you please pin your video?
Sure. There we go.
Great, I'm going to mute my.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thank you to Lynn and the Great Synagogue for hosting this evening and for giving me the opportunity to talk to all of you about our journey with dementia, because that's really exactly what it was. It was a journey and a steep learning curve for us. And what we really hope to do now is to be able to empower others to be able to care for a loved one with dementia, or to even just know how to interact better and respond better to somebody living with dementia. If somebody with dementia is coming to the Great Synagogue, how best to approach them and how best to interact with them. So I want to start off by saying one of the biggest mitzvot in Judaism is honoring our mother and father. It's one of the 10 commandments, and the rabbis and sages tell us it's such an important mitzvah. And it's not easy to do always. And it's especially not easy as our parents develop dementia. And it's a really challenging mitzvah to uphold and to keep on. And so to anyone out there who is caring for somebody, it's, you know, a pat on your back, because it's not an easy mitzvah to uphold. So sometimes we call these Zoom sessions that we run stories told, lessons learned, or still here. And the reason we call it still here is because when somebody has a diagnosis with dementia, family and loved ones tend to feel that my mum's not here anymore, or my dad's not here anymore. But really, you'll hear through my stories tonight that there are still parts of that person that are so still here with us. And it's just up to us to learn how to interact with them and how to find those parts of them that are still here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my mum, Rochi, or as fondly known to one and all in the family and in the community and in the neighborhood as Gaggy. So Rochi was born on a farm in South Africa in a very small little place called Skierpoort. They were the only Jewish family for miles around. And her father was a shoichet. He killed their own chickens on the farm. And she loved this simple, primitive way of life. I tell you this background because it will have relevance later on in my stories. They never had a refrigerator. They had an ice box outside in the fridge. Her mother cooked all their own food. They had a cow that they milked, and every Friday for Shabbat, her father would shecht a chicken. And she loved this primitive, simple life. Later on in her dementia journey, she yearned for this simple life. So my mum had lived in our house for about 15 years already, prior to having dementia. And she lived downstairs our house in a granny flat. And she came upstairs one day and looked around, and with an absolute look of wonder and astonishment on her face, said to me, "Soll sein mit Glück." Now, for those of you who don't understand Yiddish, that means, good luck. Hopefully, please God, there will be lots of Glück, good luck. And I said, "For what, Mom?" And she said, "For your new house. It's a beautiful new house. It's lovely." Now, she'd lived in this house for 15 years already. So my initial reaction was to say to her, "Mom, don't be ridiculous. We've lived here for 15 years. This is your house." And then I stepped back and my OT hat took over, and I knew never to argue with her, not to argue. So instead of saying, "Mum, this is your home. This is 10 Alvona Avenue. This is, look, all your photos and your ornaments," I said, "Thank you. Thank you. Glad you like it." And she walked around admiring everything in our new home. Well, I knew immediately that something was very wrong. And so my initial reaction was, perhaps she's got a urinary tract infection, because urinary tract infections in older people can cause confusion and agitation. So off we went, straight off to the GP, and thus began our journey in getting that initial diagnosis of dementia. That time, it was not a urinary tract infection. And so after scans and x-rays and blood tests, the GP called me in to come in and see him without my mum, and gave me the diagnosis that she did in actual fact have vascular dementia. And I sat in my car and I cried and cried for about 2 hours. I sobbed. I thought, here's my beautiful, clever, capable, intelligent mum. What's to happen to her? What's going to happen? How am I going to look after her? And thank God, I really believe with Hashem's help and Hashem's blessings and my amazing husband and children, it really was a team effort. We did look after her for another 10 years in our home. So urinary tract infections or any other severe infection in an older person can cause something called a delirium. And that, I learned very quickly, can actually be a life-threatening situation. If there is a sudden change in their status, so if somebody who is usually confused becomes more confused, or somebody who's not aggressive becomes suddenly aggressive, or not agitated becomes suddenly agitated, a trip to the GP is really recommended, with a request to test their urine. And there were many, many urinary tract infections that followed. But that time, that was not a urinary tract infection. And that was the very difficult stage of receiving the diagnosis. That day, the GP said to me, "Adelle, I'm going to give you 3 bits of advice." He said, "You need to shut up, put up, and develop a sense of humor." And when I was sitting in my car sobbing, I thought, what an insensitive, awful man. He'd been my mum's doctor for many years, and here he is telling me to shut up and develop a sense of humor. But in hindsight, many years down the track, it was really good advice that he gave me. Number 1, shut up. Like I said with the new house, and lesson number 1, tonight is all about learning lessons. Never argue. It's not worth it. In my mum's mind, it was a new house, not worth arguing. It would have made her more confused, more agitated, and really upset her. So never argue. So shut up was a really good bit of advice. And developing a sense of humor, absolutely. We so had a great sense of humor, all of us. And we used to laugh and laugh, never at my mum, but always with her. And we'd have a good giggle, and she would have a good giggle with us. And at times I used to feel, am I being disrespectful having a giggle? And then I think, no, I'm enhancing her quality of life. And you will hear some of the stories that we giggled about. And it was just laughing with her. And we just really had to have that sense of humor. And put up, yep, we had to put up with a lot of change, a lot of change. And nobody really likes change. We could never just step outside our house and walk out when we wanted. Everything had to be planned. We always had to plan that somebody was here with Gaggy. Somebody was here to take care of her. Her meals were taken care of, her medication, etc., etc. So there was a lot that we had to put up with. So lesson number 1, it was to never argue, never ever argue. Basically, shut up. So the one day, it was quite a few years, I'd say, into my mum's dementia diagnosis. We'd moved her from living in her granny flat downstairs to living upstairs with us in one of our bedrooms because she was no longer managing in her independent little granny flat. And she called me into the room, Del. Yes, Mom, what is it? The chickens, the chickens in my bed, chickens here, chickens in. Take the chickens away, the chickens. Oh, I'm so scared of the chickens, get rid of the chickens. And so again, my initial reaction was to, Mum, don't be ridiculous. You're in your bed, you're in your room. Look around you. There's no chickens. But she was even making the chicken noises like, now, as I said, she'd grown up on a farm. They had lots of chickens. Her father used to chef the chicken every week. And she actually loved the chickens. And it came to me very quickly that she was having hallucinations. Not only was she having visual hallucinations, she was seeing the chickens in her bed, she was hearing the chickens as well. And she was like, the chickens are so noisy. She was blocking her ears, trying to block out the sound. And this was very, very scary for her. So would it have helped for me to say, Mom, don't be ridiculous. There are no chickens in your bed? No, don't argue. So what did I have to do? I had to connect with her on her level, at her eye level, using touch, hand on her hand or hand on her arm, and let her know that she's safe, that she was safe and she was okay, and that I could hear the chickens too. So I was validating to her how she was feeling and not making her feel like she was being stupid or ridiculous. So, yep, Mum, they're chickens. They're very noisy chickens today. Let's leave the chickens here and we will go and have a cup of tea. For those who don't know, a cup of tea can solve the world's problems, really. We drank endless cups of tea and always a piece of cake or a cookie or a biscuit. She had a real sweet tooth. So validating to someone how they're feeling. I know it's very scary. The chickens are very loud today. And then connecting with her and redirecting her is lesson number 2 that I want to teach you. Validate how someone is feeling because they're feeling scared and insecure and not sure what's happening. So validate to somebody how they're feeling and then connect with them, but redirect them. And when I work with carers on one-to-one, teaching people how to care for somebody with dementia, I teach them this strategy. So connect and redirect. And I use that as a visual cue for them to connect and redirect. So I would connect with my mom and then redirect her to come, let's go out of here and have a cup of tea, and we will leave somebody else to deal with the chickens. Thank goodness we discovered through our amazing geriatrician that we had, who was like an angel to me, really important to have a fantastic, approachable geriatrician that you can work with, that her hallucinations that she suddenly started having really very often were as a result of drug interactions. So 2 drugs that she was taking were interacting, and we stopped the drugs, and so did the hallucinations stop. The hallucinations were always about chickens or about snakes. But a funny story is she started to tell me that there's a monster under her bed. And I thought, oh dear, the hallucinations are back. There's a monster under my bed. There's a monster under my bed. And so never argued with her. We checked under the bed. I didn't see a monster. I looked, and we sprayed Glen 20 under the bed. It was monster spray. We even relabeled the can of Glen 20 to say monster spray. And this monster story went on and on for about 2 weeks. And I have to confess, I never really had a really good look under her bed. Like I'd bend down and go, shoo monster, out of here, off you go. There, mum, it's gone. One day, we had a Labrador puppy at the time, and I was walking down the corridor just here, and I happened to glance in my mum's room, thank goodness. And there from under her bed was a huge, big, to me it looked huge and big. It must have been about 30 centimeters long, a blue tongue lizard. And we live in St. Ives, and it's quite bushy around where we live, and there's a lot of lizards here. And so this blue tongue lizard had its head peeking out from under the bed and its tongue darting in and out. And I nearly died because I'm really not very brave about lizards. And so thank goodness my son Colby was home. Colby! And my mom was like, what? I was like, no, Mom, we're just going to put on Andre Rieu for you. Like, God bless Andre Rieu. He got me out of so many sticky situations. And we're just going to clean the carpet. It just needs a bit of a clean. And I called Colby, and he quickly Googled how to attract a blue-tongue lizard and some frozen mincemeat in the freezer. And we enticed the blue-tongue lizard out from under her bed. So that time she wasn't hallucinating at all. For 2 weeks, she'd been telling me there's a monster under my bed, and there actually was a monster under her bed. The poor thing, we didn't believe her. So that was one story that we had a good little giggle about afterwards. Poor Gaggy, we better believe her in future when she tells us things. So I needed a few cups of tea after that to calm down after having that huge, big lizard. So my mum's dementia was progressing, and she didn't remember our names. My husband was usually the fat fellow or the manager or the doctor, or I was usually her mum. So she would introduce me and she'd say, my mom, have you met my mom? Or she would talk about me as my mom, and she called me Ma. And I just was so used to answering to Ma that it just became second nature for me. But the one thing that she never, ever, ever forgot was David Jones. It was amazing. She loved shopping. All her life, she loved shopping. And I often used to take her to the shops. It was hard. It was a schlep. It was difficult to get her into the car and then out the car and then unfold the wheelchair and get her into the wheelchair. And then we always had to go for a cappuccino and a cake. It's like sacrilegious to go to the shops and not stop for coffee and cake. And so it was really quite a mission taking her to the shops, but she loved the shops. And she especially loved David Jones. And she never forgot David Jones' name. So it was a Sunday, and it was a wet, wet Sunday, and it was pouring with rain. And she got in her mind she wanted to go to David Jones that day. And we had a brand new carer who had just started working for us. She was a gorgeous Nepalese carer who was just wonderful, who remained with us for some years till my mum actually passed away. She was with us. Our carers, I was very blessed. They used to come to me. Beth used to say to me, Mummy, they will come min hashamayim, and they really did. I really had the most wonderful carers, and she was one of them. And it was her first day with us, and my mum just wanted to go to David Jones. So I said, you know what, Mum? There's a new David Jones opened up just round the corner. I'm going to phone and find out what time it's open. Oh, okay. I said, you get ready. Patricia, get Gaggy ready, like she's going to David Jones. Patricia looked at me a bit odd, like, oh, really? Are we taking her out in this weather? And I said, no, get her ready, because she would always get dressed up really nicely, put on her makeup, put on her lipstick. And I was always very particular with the carers about that. My mum always had to look good because she was always well kept her whole life. And I just felt that now, because she's living with dementia, she shouldn't look unkempt or mismatched or whatever. So I was really quite firm with the carers about it. And she took great pride in, you know, putting on her lipstick and putting on her necklace or in her handbag and whatever. And while she was doing that, we have a rack that we use in the laundry to hang the clean laundry on. And I quickly pulled it into the lounge room, and I literally took an armful of clothes out of my cupboard and hung them on the rack. And there was some folded towels on the kitchen bench. I put them on the dining room table, and a few other things I put out. And I had a little cash register from my kids. And I went in and I said, okay, Mom, new David Jones is open. Come on, off we go. And guess what? The best part is we can walk there. Oh, very nice. Okay. She never knew one part of our house from the next. She was already, let's say, 5 years or maybe even more, 6 years into her dementia journey. And so we walked out her room, into the kitchen, through the TV room, and into the living room. Look, here's David Jones. Oh, here are all the dresses. Well, she was very excited. We handed her a David Jones shopping bag. Oh, yes, I'll have this one. I'll have that one. Oh, these are very nice towels. Yes, how much is that? $20. Oh, okay, I'll have that. She filled up her bag with whatever she wanted, and she paid with her expired credit card that she had in her wallet, because she always wanted money and always wanted credit cards. So we gave her expired credit cards, and she had coffee and cake at the dining room table, aka David Jones Cafe, and she was as happy as anything. Now, you might say, was that disrespectful to deceive her like that? No. It gave her the most wonderful afternoon. It filled her afternoon with a meaningful activity. And that's what our whole lives were about filling her life with meaning and giving her meaning. And if going to a pretend David Jones gave her meaning, then that's what we did. And it was all about being flexible. The one day she was nagging my husband, I want to go to level 4. Take me to level 4. And she was becoming quite agitated about wanting to go to level 4. And of course, we don't have 4 levels in our house. So Mark said, okay, sure, Rocky, come. And our laundry door is a sliding door. So he said, come on, into the lift. Here's the lift. She stepped in, closed the door, and bing, opened the door. Oh, we're on level 4 now. Again, she was happy. Oh, thank you so much. So it was just all about filling her life with meaning and being flexible. And we were so flexible. Anything that was worrying her, we fixed. Whether it was printing off letters from the bank manager, fat letters from the bank manager, or a pretend bank statement to make her happy, or whatever it was, we just wanted to fill her life with meaning and keep her happy. And so we learned very early on in the piece that we had to be flexible. So one really, really common difficulty that people living with dementia have is they ask to go home. And it's very sad and a very difficult one for care partners to deal with, that somebody repeatedly asks to go home. I want to go home. Take me home. And Rochi wouldn't ask once or twice. She would ask 20, 30, 40, 50 times in a day. I want to go home. Take me home. Why won't you take me home? What's wrong with you? Why won't you take me home? And as much as we tried to validate how she was feeling, connect and redirect, make excuses, it's raining today, it's too hot today, my car's in for servicing today, whatever excuse we could think of, it would never distract her from wanting to go home. And I really feel that that desire to want to go home could very well be wanting to go to a childhood home, which I think in her case it very often was, because she used to yearn for the river I would say to her, Mum, tell me about home. What's at home? And she'd say, the river. I hear the sounds of the river, or the mountains, the hills. She really yearned for home. And so no amount of arguing, no amount of trying to convince her, Mum, this is your home, this is where you've lived for 20 years. Look, everything around you. No, it wasn't going to do it. Very often we used to put her in the car and take her for a drive, and then come back and say, you know, like the last few meters we were in the car, look, oh, look, here's Mara's house. This is our house. This is where we live. We put a picture of her on the front door. This is where Rochi lives. And we would take her out like that. And that very often did work, that because we'd broken that cycle, we'd taken her for a drive and brought her back home. One day she absolutely refused to get out the car, and it was a hot summer's day. And I was really starting to panic. I thought I was going to have to phone 000, police, ambulance, fire, I wasn't sure who, to come and help me get her out the car, because she could get stubborn and not want to get out the car. Usually I would just reverse back out, drive around the block again. Sometimes we'd walk out one door and in the next, oh, look, we're home now. And very often that worked. But sometimes home was really just a feeling of wanting to be somewhere where she didn't feel confused, where she didn't feel afraid or like there was too much unknown, where everything was just in order and familiar and right. And we just tried our best to give her those feelings. But very often, those kinds of behaviors, I want to go home, are also a sign of a need. So like we call it needs-based behaviors. So maybe it was her way of saying, I need the bathroom. I don't know this place. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know where the bathroom is. But if I go home, I'll know where the bathroom is. Or, you know, I'm really hungry or I'm really thirsty. And this house is strange to me and I can't just go to the fridge and take something to eat, but at home I can get something to eat. So very often it is a matter of finding out what that need is. But the strategy that worked best for us, and is a well-known strategy to work well, is connecting with her, like I said, validating that she wants to go home and repeating back to her. So, Mum, I understand you're feeling not so happy. You want to go home? And she'd go, yep, I want to go home. And I'd say, tell me about home. And she might say, my mother's waiting for me. Oh, your mother's waiting for you. Repeating back to her again. And with that, we'd be walking off and, well, let's have a cup of tea before we go home. And it was very often enough to distract her. And so these are strategies that work well and that we learned and are well documented strategies that we can teach to others. So just to recap so far, because Beth's a teacher and if she was with me tonight, she would be recapping. So I better do that so that she's feeling happy with me. So the first strategy was don't argue, never argue, not worth it. Second one was validate their feelings and connect and redirect. The third one, the David Jones story, was learning to be flexible. And this fourth one is repeating back. So repeat back to somebody what they're feeling agitated or anxious about. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is self-care as care partners or caregivers. I don't know if there's anybody listening tonight who is caring for somebody with dementia, but caring for yourself is really, really important. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not a short-term sprint. My mum lived with us with dementia for 10 years. And I used to get really, really tired, really exhausted. And one of the biggest difficulties people living with dementia have is sleep disturbances, that sleep becomes a real problem. And I had a son you know, in the house doing university, and he had exams and needed to sleep, and my husband needed to sleep, and I needed to sleep. I was still working, but I used to try and keep her quiet and settled at night rather than disrupting the whole house. There were many nights when she disrupted the whole house, but I used to try, and she had a reclining chair in her room, which we got for her. And I used to go and sit on the reclining chair with her, and instead of fighting her and just try to make her go and sleep, which she just would never do, we used to put on Andre Rieu or DVD or a CD, listen to music, dim the lights, try and keep her calm. And I would recline in her reclining chair and try and be comfortable. And one night I was really tired, and I was feeling a little bit not happy about being in this reclining chair when I could have been in my nice comfortable bed in the room next door. So I was feeling a bit agitated about it. And that's normal. Like, that's absolutely normal. Like, the next morning I'd be racked with guilt. Like, how could I feel that? Like, my mum's got no control over her behavior. How could I feel angry at her for keeping me awake? But it's absolutely normal to feel those feelings of resent and anger as care partners. And so the one night I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to feel angry about this anymore. I need to look at it in a different light. And I've never been in business class in my life. So I thought, oh, I'm going to recline. And I'm sure this is what business class is like. So I'm going to let my mind wander to all the wonderful places I'd like to go and travel business class. And I guess today that's all we can do is armchair travel. And so I was just ahead of times, and I used to lay back and imagine all the beautiful places that I could be going and try and relax myself that way. And sometimes I'd get back to bed and my husband would say, "You've been in business class again." And I'd go, "Yeah." So it's really important for care partners to find how you can relax. It might mean a few quiet minutes in a different part of the house, to have a cup of tea or a drink of water or something to eat by yourself, just a few minutes time out. It might be a relaxation technique that you've learned or a meditation technique that you've learned. It might mean sitting with the loved one with dementia and doing something together, but that relaxes you, like listening to music or some mindful coloring in or flower arranging or doing any other kind of activity, a cooking activity or whatever. But it really is important to take care of yourselves as carers and seek help if you need it, and seek respite for yourself. So even if it is just a couple of hours for somebody to come in, be with the person with dementia so that you can go out, or even an overnight stay or whatever. There are no other family members available to help, then there are amazing caregivers out there. And like I said to you earlier, I really, really feel that I was very much guided by Hashem in this journey. Every Friday night when I lit candles with my mum, she lit candles every Friday night of her life until her last Shabbat. And she never forgot the brocha, never. She always remembered the brocha. All our Filipino Nepalese carers all knew the brocha by the end as well. And she would cover her eyes and she would say the brocha really from the depths of her soul. And she would then go into saying her own brocha in Yiddish always. And she'd go, "Mein Vater in Himmel." And she would pray for whoever needed praying for that week and for whatever she felt needed to be prayed for. And it was amazing. It was like for a few seconds every week, the clouds opened and she was kind of still here with me. She was still, my old mum, because somehow she just always knew who to pray for and what to pray for. And those weekly prayers were meant the world to me. And I would pray every Friday night when I lit my candles, "Please Hashem, just guide me so that I know what to do and I know how to do it and I know when to do it." I had to learn things that I never in my wildest dreams thought I could ever do or I would ever be able to do. I've got a weak stomach. I could never have been a nurse, but somehow I was just able to care for her and do everything that needed doing. Somehow I became empowered to do these high care nursing tasks that I never knew I would be able to do. And I really believe that it was Hashem that guided me and helped me and showed me the path, and also helped me to know when the time was right, because the last 3 months she had to go into the Montefiore home, and it was very hard for me. It was a very difficult transition for me, that putting her in the Montefiore, and whilst they were amazing, it was a hard time for me. And I discovered on her first day in Montefiore that my role as a carer was definitely not over, and my role as her advocate was definitely not over. In fact, I needed to advocate for her much more so than ever before, because when she was at home, I had control of the situation, but here in Montefiore, you know, I was handing over control. So I needed to advocate for her much more so than ever before, and I did, and I was there every day, and you know, to make sure that she got the best care possible. And I really believe also that Hashem sent me the most amazing people on my journey to help me with her. Like I said, I used to advertise for carers on Gumtree, which was a risk, but I had it absolutely down pat by the end, and we had the most amazing people come into our lives. Our one Nepalese carer, Patricia, who was Hindu, used to say at the end, "I'm not Hindu anymore, I'm a Hindu." And when my mum was in Montefiore and stopped eating, and I called her and I said, "Patricia, Gaggy has stopped eating, I'm so sad." And she said to me, "Adelle, have you made her Lokshan Kugel? She loves Lokshan Kugel." And so my Nepalese carer was reminding me that, you know, my mum loved Lokshan Kugel so much. And so it really was very much my faith that kept me going, and my family. My husband was amazing, and my kids and my son-in-law and the grandchildren, and you know, intergenerational play is such a big thing now. There was a whole program about it on the ABC, and it was amazing to see my mum interacting with my grandchildren, and all the kids in the neighborhood used to come and they used to do puzzles with her and sing with her, and you know, we really reached out to our greater community to connect with her. And it was really a wonderful journey. And I'm thankful that I had the time and I had the ability and I had the support and that I was able to do it. And so that's why I do these Zooms now or face-to-face presentations, because I want to be able to help others and empower others to be able to care for someone. And it doesn't only necessarily mean caring for someone in your own home. It means caring for someone if they're in the Montefiore home or anywhere else, any other aged care facility, because you still need to be there for them, to advocate for them. And I say to people, I want to teach people to respond to people with dementia, not react to them. Because when somebody's saying the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you say, "Mum, you've told me that 100 times already," that's reacting. So I want to teach people to respond and know how to respond rather than react. I'm going to end off with one sweet little story. One night we heard rustling in my mum's bedroom. It was like 2 a.m. And so I got up and I went into her room, and she was sitting on the edge of her bed, and she had a little cupboard in her room with sweet things in, because I didn't want them in the kitchen cupboard because we would all eat them. But somehow all the kids knew that there was this cupboard of contraband in her room. And one of the carers used to bring her Tim Tams. And so she had the Tim Tams there. And she was sitting on the edge of her bed with a packet of Tim Tams open, and about 3 had already disappeared. So she'd obviously eaten 3 already. And she was packing into another Tim Tam, and I caught her sort of just like that. And I said, "Mum, what are you doing? It's 3 o'clock in the morning." And she went, "They're delicious. You want to buy?" And that was just another message to me that, yep, my mum is still here. She's still with me. She was the most generous, giving person. She would never eat a piece of fruit on her own. She would always share it. And we still used to see those little bits of her coming out all the time. And so I'm just so grateful for those times that we had.
Can I just, Mum, I'm here. Can I jump in and
Sure. Hi, Bethy.
Hi everyone. My name's Beth. I'm Adelle's daughter. I'm sorry I was a bit late. My children giving me a bit of trouble and I have a broken foot. But I just wanted to say to all of you who have a loved one with dementia, I'm sure my mum's already mentioned it. You're doing a good job, and I'm sure I'm repeating points that you've already said, but you're a carer for someone even if they're not living in your home. You have to advocate for them, and that's what our kind of mission statement is, I suppose. And yeah, just deal with them with love and compassion, and that's really our focus. And we have so many beautiful memories, which I'm sure my mum shared with you, all of our stories. And did you tell the story about the monster under the bed?
Yeah.
Yeah, the family classic.
Yeah. I always say to Beth, I'm going to write a book one day and call it There's a Monster Under My Bed. Yeah, so it really was quite a journey, and Beth was amazing. Beth is very creative, being a primary school teacher, and so she was often the one that came up with the creative ideas. Sharon, is there time for one more quick story?
Absolutely.
Beth, you tell the story about your bag of jewelry.
Oh, so we referred to my gran as Gaggy. So Gaggy always loved jewelry. Well, actually, no, she wasn't actually so fond of jewelry. No, she wasn't. But when she developed dementia, she suddenly grew this like fascination and this like absolute love for costume jewelry, like cheap jewelry from Diva, or these like $2 shops. And she loved these like fake diamonds and baubles, and she absolutely loved them.
It was very out of character for her, actually.
Yeah, she wasn't a person who loved things. She never had fancy jewelry. She wasn't a fancy person. She liked clothes and she liked having nice clothes, but she was never one for jewelry, actually. Anyway, so I was living in Melbourne at the time, and one of the teachers came into the staff room, and she had all this like costume jewelry, and she chucked it all on the staff room table, and she said, does anyone want this? Like, I'm getting rid of it. I'm going to put it in the charity bin. I said, oh yes, I'll take it. And I went to Astoria, which in Melbourne is like a paper goods shop. And I bought about 15 little colored paper bags in different colors. I put about this big, and I put each piece of like costume jewelry in a different bag. And I went to Sydney and I said, Gaggy, I've got a birthday present for you. And she said, oh, what is it? And I took out these like 20 bags and I said, look, I've got all these presents for you. And like, she moved very slowly, particularly as the dementia progressed. So she would like take the bag and open it and take the jewelry out, and oh, it's magnificent. It's stunning. Thank you so much. And like each bag gave her so much joy. Like it was like I was giving her the crown jewels, or like, Titanic, the end of Titanic, the old lady drops that huge rock in the ocean. It was like I was giving her that. And it just, shows you that when you're caring for someone or you love someone who's living with dementia, you really have to be creative and channel into their interests and their identity and what works for them in order to, maintain that joy of life, and just to see her smile, even for us, and to see that joy on her face was just as joyful for us as it was for her. So yeah, you've really got to think outside the box and try and use what you got and be creative.
And for her 90th birthday, we decided not to have a party because it just would have been too overwhelming for her. But what I did was I sent out emails and messages on Facebook far and wide. It's Rochi's 90th birthday. It doesn't matter if you don't know her. She doesn't remember anyone anyway. So what's the difference if you know her or not? Please send her a card or a letter. And I gave people very specific instruction what to write in the card or what to put in a letter. Like not everybody the same, obviously. Just, like for example, she loves gardens. So send a picture of a flower and a short message, a brief message. And she must have got close on 100 cards or letters from really all around the world. And she was just absolutely so taken with us. And we put them all in an album, and I've still got the album. And she spent many, many hours and days paging through this album and reading the cards and reading the letters. And something else that I do with families is I teach them how to make a memory book, because that's just so valuable, not only for the person living with dementia, but for the whole family to be able to contribute to it. And it provides the family with many hours of meaningful activity and things they can do together. So she had a memory book, which she absolutely loved, and it's in tatters now because I've got to put it back together. I just haven't had the heart to take it out for 18 months. But she spent so many hours with that, and so many hours with her album of letters and cards from unknown people. And I said, please don't send an email. Send it in the snail mail. Our postman must have wondered what was going on. And we got so many letters, and it was amazing. And, you know, like I say, the whole neighborhood was really like, we used to pop in and visit, and it really was just a wonderful journey for us all. Beth, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I'm sure you've covered all our stories that we.
My son played the harmonica, and he used to spend hours playing with her, and she loved the dog. And
we used to. She loved musicals, and as her dementia progressed as well, she often mistook TV for reality. So whatever she saw on TV, she'd think it was in the room. So we had to be very careful what was on the TV. For example, we'd never have any crime shows or anything scary, or even the news we didn't put on. So we'd have like the home improvement shows and gardening and nice things like that. And she loved watching musicals. And so I think in her last year of life, I must have watched Joseph about 55,000 times. I just used to lie on her bed and watch Joseph again and again and again with her. I knew all the songs like inside out, but you know, it's precious.
My Fair Lady, or
and that's what she loved. So that was special.
And our house, we had lots of visuals up in our house, lots of signs, toilet, you know.
With the picture as well as the words, in case, you know.
Picture and the word.
It got to the place where she couldn't read.
Obviously, our house was very safe in terms of the bathroom and her bedroom and flooring and rails and all that kind of thing. And swallowing was a problem for her at the end. So she had soft food, but always delicious food, always food that she liked. And she enjoyed her food. A few days before she died, she had apple crumble and ice cream. Much against the speech pathologist's advice at Montefiore. She used to say, ice cream melts, it turns into liquid, it's much too dangerous. And I'd say, thank you. I wouldn't recommend not taking a speech therapist's advice, but she loved it. But she did have a thickened diet, and we were very aware of her swallowing, because that can be really dangerous if they aspirate.
Does anybody have any questions for Adelle and Beth? While you're thinking of questions, either you can ask them or write them in the chat box. But I must say, personally, those of you who know me know that my mom has dementia, and she's in the Monty. And I heard Adelle and Beth's talk that they did for another one of the shuls in Sydney some months ago. And so many of the things that you have described pertain to my mum as well. And so much of your advice I have put into action. I want to go home. You know, when I visit her at the mountain, I want to go home. And so I say, yes, Mom, we're going soon, just as soon as they've brought your tea. And so what you said, shut up and never argue. She asks for her mother a lot.
Yeah.
The last week, in fact, I had to tell her that I was her mother.
Yep.
And that really calmed her down.
Mm.
It's so weird. When she asks where my dad is, and my dad died 2 years ago, I tell her he's at the surgery. My dad was a GP, and he's at the surgery. He'll be back soon. And because my dad was always at the surgery, that's something that resonates with her. But these are all things, Adelle and Beth, that I learned from you. About being an advocate, I agree 100%. And it's you really have to when they're in an institution. And this was what the lockdown made so very difficult for us, because when my sisters and I visit several times a week, we can see little things that happen all the time. When we weren't there for months on end, it was a nightmare. I mean, I'm not saying that the Monty's care was a nightmare. I'm just saying that when we did eventually come back, there were some things that we had to advocate more strongly about.
So Sharon, on our Facebook page, which everybody should feel free to go to our Facebook page, which is Dots Home Services, because there are lots of videos and advice and tips. And Sharon, Beth did a fantastic video just at the start of COVID about how to interact with someone from a distance or through a screen. And that's really helpful. You'll enjoy that one.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID has made visiting so much harder and so much more challenging and really difficult for families.
Yeah, that's something we do help families with, making their visits meaningful. And yeah, but Sharon, it sounds like you're doing a fantastic job.
Well done.
I try, and I'm very lucky that I have two sisters here in Sydney who are equally involved with my mum. So, I mean, it seems to me, Adelle, do you have siblings who were involved as well, or was this all you?
No, it was mainly me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm lucky that I mean, my siblings.
It wasn't just me. It was Mark and Beth and Joel and Colby, and yeah. So I was very lucky.
Izzy, the dog. He's very protective.
Yeah. But it's a very difficult thing to watch. To watch it happening to a loved one. It really is.
It is hard, and very often somebody living with dementia will. I'm not saying this is happening, but like I see it happen in other families where somebody living with dementia may remember one child but not others, or may remember one child's name but not others. And that's hard for the other siblings, like when our mum remembers your name but not mine. And that's quite hard for some families, but it can happen. That they're just splinter skills that are retained.
Right.
That's why memory books are such a good thing to do.
Yeah, although I think my mom's at the point that she can't really absorb what she's seeing.
Maybe.
It's, yeah. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Any other experiences that anyone else wants to share? You can just unmute yourself.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Thank you for the most really insight of this conversation. I am wondering, my father passed away just a couple of months of vascular dementia, but I'm helping to look after other people. Is there anything apart from the memory books or the jewelry that you can bring in that will settle them? Because I've seen at Montefiore some needed things that people take in for them to play. But my concern with that is that I often see them putting things in their mouth. Yeah. So I'm also concerned of them giving them something that they can choke on. So absolutely. That would be my question. Thank you.
So we run, so Beth and I actually run a professional seminar, which we called Rummage. And it's all about rummage boxes and fiddling, because people with dementia do like to fiddle and rummage. So my mum had a fiddle blanket, which I know the diversional therapists or lifestyle therapists at the Montefiore have many of them. So you could ask one of the lifestyle therapists for a fiddle blanket. They've got lots of different ones, and that is very calming. So it's like a blanket, like a knee rug, And my mum's had beads and buckles and ribbons and different fabrics for different textures and ribbons and all that kind of thing for her to fiddle with. And she spent many hours, and it was like her security blanket. We used to take it with if she went to hospital, or if she had to go for an appointment, we used to take it with, because it would provide her with many hours of comfort to fiddle with it and play with it. But the other thing that we do is we create boxes called rummage boxes, because people with dementia do like to rummage and sort. And as the dementia progresses, this is quite often something they can do. So, but you're absolutely right. Number one needs to be safe. Like, for example, my mum, I found her the one day just about to bite into a bar of soap, like Lux soap. And I said, Mum, that's soap. She said, no, it's not, it's a cake. So she thought it was a cookie she was about to bite into. So obviously it has to be everything that's safe, that, you know, they can't eat or drink or swallow, small beads or things like that. But yeah, and the rummage boxes are very individualized. So like, for example, I've got a gentleman who was a plumber. And so I went off to Bunnings Homewares and I got them to cut PVA tubing into pieces like 10 centimeters big with lots of joining bits with it. And we've created this big box for him of PVA tubing that he can just sit and connect together and pull apart and connect together. And I've got another man with younger onset dementia that's got nuts and bolts. So it's very individualized to each person. So yes, you should absolutely take something, but it needs to be done carefully with thought that it's safe and that it's appropriate to that person. So whatever interests they have, like the jewelry that my mum got was my mum's, she used to sit and rummage through them. We put them all in a little vanity suitcase and she used to spend hours rummaging through that vanity suitcase. And that was her rummage box. But, you know, safety is number one. And interest, you know, like if they were a dressmaker, then lace and buttons and zips and things like that. If they were a cook, then wooden spoons and spatulas and measuring cups and whatever. So yeah, but you should really ask the leisure and lifestyle staff at Montefiore for help with that. They should be able to help you.
I was going to say, does anybody else have any comments or Jenny?
What are the signs? Are they all different? For example, like forgetting names in the beginning.
So I didn't really talk about that this evening. And I think in hindsight, I probably missed a few of my mum's very early signs. But they're very varied. I think we all forget names. I forget names all the time. I forget where I've put things all the time. I do stupid things like putting things in the fridge which should go in the oven. And
I feel much better.
I don't think you should worry about forgetting things. And I think that we all have to be very aware of the fact that there are signs and symptoms of normal aging as compared to signs and symptoms of dementia. So I think that if that is something that somebody's concerned about, then, you know, see a GP or to talk about it. But I don't think you should be too concerned about forgetting people's names.
Recall.
Yeah, working memory. I think, you know, biggest thing about with memory and dementia is that we know now that it's not only memory. First of all, there are over 100 different kinds of dementia. Dementia is a big umbrella term for lots of different kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's being the most common. There's frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, etc. And they all affect the brain differently, and they all affect different parts of the brain. But I think with memory, we have to look at memory like this, that with dementia, we have difficulty laying down new memories.
I hear you.
Yeah. So dementia also affects, you know, all executive thoughts, a higher order executive thoughts, like, you know, being able to look after one's finances and And
You're doing wonders, and it's wonderful that you go out like this. Thank you so much.
thank you for joining us.
Adele, we have a message in the chat box for you from Dionne Drexler. She
Yes.
says, "Hi, Adele. When we had to admit Paul's late mother, Helen Drexler,
Helen.
to Monty in Hunters Hill, you were the first OT who greeted and helped us. Helen lived 14 years at Monty with us as her support. It was a very long journey, but we never gave up. She lived till 97 years of age. Keep up your excellent work. Thank you for tonight. Paul and Dionne, together with our wonderful daughters, Julie and Michelle, who were magnificent."
Oh, hello, Drexler family. I remember you all, and I remember Helen. Thank you. Well done. Kol hakavod to you for supporting her for 14 years at Monty. Wow.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, when I was at Monty, because it's like I was there because I lived there. So like like the one day I picked flowers in the garden, so I said to somebody there, "Can I pick flowers?" And they said, "Well, I don't know." So I thought, okay, no one said no. So I took a basket and we picked a few flowers and took them back and arranged the flower arranging, and I gathered a few of the other ladies who were sitting in the, at the nurse's station that day. And so the activities did not stop just because my mum was at Monty. We
Must be very.
There's lots of ways to engage with your loved ones in a visit. And yeah, there's lots of things you can bring with you, or things that are available there, little things and little tricky ways we came up with, and my mum with her skills as an OT has, of how to really engage with them in a way that's meaningful for them and not just you. So, instead of just you sitting there talking about something and they might not be following what you're saying, there's ways to actually engage where they're engaged too. That's something my mum's excellent at, I have to say.
There was somebody in the community that used to come sing with my mum. Every week he would come and they would come and sing with her for no other reason than they just wanted to come and sing with her. And they were just two young boys, and it brought such joy into my mother's life. And so I think don't be afraid to reach out to your community. Reach out to the Great Synagogue community to support each other and help each other, because it really is all about, support.
Kindness.
Sharon.
Yes.
Sharon, Gary
Wonderful.
Sharon, it's Gary Inberg, and I just want to say thank you for hosting such a wonderful evening tonight. As you know, I'm Vice President of the Monty, and it's been wonderful listening to a lot of your listeners and the topic, and I really have enjoyed it. I chair the Operations and Risk Committee at Monty, particularly, and have a lot of interest in the dementia side of how we look after our residents. So congratulations, and thank you for putting on such a great evening.
Right.
Thank you for taking care of the elders in the community.
Absolutely.
And for doing your best to make sure that they are cared for in such a wonderful, loving Jewish environment. And thank you. And yeah, we love collaborating, so we'd be happy to chat with you and hearing what you guys are doing to support your residents with dementia and how we can even maybe help.
Anytime you want to reach out, we're happy to connect and help, and let's get together. So
yes, definitely.
I lived in Shira for 3 months.
Yeah, I have the experience myself. So all the very best, Sharon, and to everybody. It's been a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary, that's lovely. Thank you so much for your kind words. And we're just, Monty has been my parents' home since 2015, and we could not be happier. The care there has been just incredible.
I think we talked briefly about memory, and one of the things that I'm very, very proud of is the introduction of the memory boxes outside of everybody's room.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the best things we've ever introduced into not only Monty, but we've actually introduced it into Australia.
Wow.
And a lot of homes in Australia are now picking up the idea and have picked up the idea And I think it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful initiative. So I'm very proud of that. But please reach out to me, and anytime I can help, please let me know.
And I have to say, Monty was amazing. We used to take our dog. And that was a huge thing that, you know, my mum could still have her pet visit.
Absolutely.
And everybody else loved him as well.
Yeah.
Well, folks,
Very
yeah,
therapeutical, very.
folks, it's getting late now. We've gone on well over an hour. This has been most. Oh no, this is tells us what a success this evening has been, and the participation from everybody, and really, Adelle and Beth, we're just so grateful to you both for being with us this evening and sharing your story and your memories and your advice and your mother's wonderful life. She lives on in what you do.
Yeah.
And we're just so grateful to you for sharing all this with us. So with that, I'm going to say good night, everybody. Please join us for our future events. Thank you, Lynn at The Great, for being our admin this evening. And we look forward to seeing all of you again soon.